Hello and welcome to the first edition of Coach K's Corner. I'm Dave Hilbert, IPFW Sports Information Director, and I'm here with IPFW head women's basketball coach Eileen Kleinfelder. Now, Eileen, going into this year, a little bit different than going into last year. Last year you were picked to finish reasonably high in the conference, contend for the conference title. This year, I don't think the expectations on the outside from the other coaches and media are there. How do you view that?
Well, first of all, I don't pay a lot of attention to preseason polls. Last year, people said maybe we were a contender for the conference. However, we were picked 4th in one poll and 5th in another poll, and we were very pleased to have finished 2nd. We could have easily tied 4 ways with Bellarmine, Kentucky Wesleyan, and Northern Kentucky, and we're just happy to have it all by ourselves. Once again, I don't really pay close attention to preseason polls. I think we're ranked this year 4th or 5th again in the preseason polls, and we're just going to take one day at a time, and if it happens, it happens. If we finish higher than that, that's super.
Do you think that has any effect on the players?
I don't think they really pay attention to the preseason polls either. If anything, it's kind of an incentive. You know, perhaps if we're not ranked as highly as we think we should be, maybe we just want to get out and prove something that we can do better than what they think we can. I always humble myself, and I try to keep the team humble too. Never expect the greatest things. Just go out there and take one day at a time, and if it happens, it happens.
Okay, now before we look ahead to the season coming up, I wanted to look back a little bit at last season. Last season was your first year as a head coach here at IPFW. Just wanted to get your thoughts about how you thought that went, compare what happened to your expectations in terms of both on the floor and just all aspects of the job.
Well, I guess in summary I could say that last year was a very prosperous year for all of us, a very enjoyable one for me personally. I loved every minute of it. I was very fortunate to inherit a good group of young ladies, good student athletes as well, and I felt we worked together very well as a team. We set goals for ourselves, and we never gave up on those goals, and one of them was to get to the NC2A tournament, which we did accomplish, and we were pleased, as I mentioned, with our 2nd place finish in the GLVC. And then on top of all that, not just the team, not just our accomplishments on the court, as a first-year head coach here at IPFW, I was very pleased and still am very pleased with all of the support that we receive, both on campus and in the community. I think the faculty at IPFW are wonderful. The athletic department is a very unified, tight family, if you want to call it that. Everyone supports each other. We have outstanding services here on campus, and Channel 6 being one of them, and the work that you do, Dave, and helping us out with our media and so forth. And in mentioning the media, I think we have fabulous support from our media. The TV networks here in Fort Wayne and the newspapers do a fabulous job, and I'm pleased with all of that. It's a very good situation, and even comparing that with all of my experiences at Division I schools, I have a lot of things here, including this talk show, that we did not have at some of the Division I schools that I was with.
That was going to be my next question. You'd spent 9 years before Division I schools. What differences did you notice? Some things you liked, some things you didn't like?
Well, one thing that always sticks out in my mind would be the atmosphere that we have at our games. Our games are exciting. Being in a smaller gym, they're noisy. Having double headers with the men certainly helps with our attendance. We have a lot of people coming out to our games just as much as they do for the men's games. The pep band certainly adds a lot of excitement, and I always say that during timeouts, if I have to yell to be heard, that's good, because there's noise in the gym. And that's one thing that does differ. You know, in some of your Division I schools have larger arenas, Assembly Hall being one example. Down at IU, I served as an assistant down there for 3 years, and we know we may have 500, 1,000 people in Assembly Hall, but when it seats 17,500, no one's noticed. You know, here at IPFW in the Gates Center, there's a great atmosphere for the games, and I really enjoy that a great deal in comparing that to Division I experiences.
Okay, now, what are some of the things that you and the team did before practice even started? I know you did a couple of activities. You did them last year, and you did some new things this year.
Right. I like to do a lot of things with the team before the season gets underway to maybe unify the team, bond the team, and just also allow opportunities for us to get out into the community and perhaps work with some groups and different organizations and volunteer work. This year we did a couple of things. We went out to the State Development Center and held a basketball clinic for the Special Olympic programs. And it wasn't just limited to Fort Wayne. We had groups from all over the region and ended up with 80 participants And it was a very good experience for my players. You know, we broke down in stations and actually taught these Special Olympians different basketball skills. Spent about an hour with them actually having a station-to-station clinic, and then we put on a small drill exhibition so they could, you know, see us play on the court. And then there was a picture-taking time. Each participant got their picture taken with the team. And the Civitan group was also involved and took care of the pictures and then also served refreshments. And it was about a 2-hour ordeal. And I think a great experience for both the participants, something they'll talk about for a long time, and as well as for my players to get out there and work with people like that. And I think that they kind of reevaluate themselves and realize how fortunate they are to have what they have and just offering themselves to these people.
And then you did a coach's clinic back in was it end of October?
Yes, I started that this year, and I hope that it gets bigger and bigger every year. I thought it would be a good idea for all area coaches at all levels, men and women, high school, junior high, CYO leagues, YMCA leagues, the colleges that we have in the area, just to get together once a year and pick each other's brain about basketball. You know, and I also want to get different level coaches involved as clinicians. You know, this year we had a few high school coaches, a few college coaches speak. Mike Scudder came in and talked about free throws. And we had Lynn Dunn in from Purdue, and I'd like to feature, you know, a very successful coach in Division I level. Each year I'd like to get someone different in, but I'm just trying to encourage a good rapport among all the coaches in the region and have a day once a year that we can annually get together and have this clinic. And I like to keep the cost relatively low so that everyone can be involved and just make it an annual thing year after year right before we get started with our seasons. And I hope that it gets better, and I'm very positive and optimistic about the growth. I hope each year that it just gets larger for us.
And what about your camp that you had last summer? I know you'd run camps at several of the big time schools, and last year was your first opportunity to do it here. How did that run?
Well, unfortunately, I wasn't here for most of it because I was involved with Athletes in Action in South America. So this past summer wasn't exactly what I'd like to have with my camps, and next year we're going to take a different approach and have an all-day camp for varsity level athletes. And something I'd like to add to our camp too, and I think might make it different than all these other camps that you hear of in the area, is I'd like to really focus on the college-bound athlete, someone who might be interested in participating in college basketball. And last year we did start this a little bit. Throughout the camp, in addition to scrimmaging and drills and so forth, teaching stations, we had some mini lectures where we talked about the NCAA rules and what it was like to be recruited. We talked about how to promote yourself as a player, as a senior in high school, to get college coaches interested in you. We had a few of my own players. Lisa Miller, for example, gave a small lecture on what it was like to be a college athlete, the demands both in the classroom and on the court. So I kind of would like to have a camp and get it started for those athletes who think they might like to play college basketball, and they can come out to our camp and certainly be involved with a lot of basketball and learn a lot of basketball skills or perfect what they already have. And in addition to that, learn about the NCAA rules, regulations, and other things involved with being a college athlete.
Is that something you don't think you see at a lot of other camps?
You don't see it an awful lot. No, I kind of got some of the idea, and that's one thing I didn't mention too. We would also talk about the academic requirements, because too often athletes just don't understand exactly what they need to be able to play college basketball. Stanford started this a few years back. They actually, at their camp, have a time period they set aside to review the SAT. And my understanding is they even have a classroom type situation where they talk about it and have someone come in and they talk about ways to take the test or better prepare for the test. So they do focus on the academic end of it too at a camp, and I think that's a great idea.
And all these things that you do on the outside, how do they help the program?
Well, I think it gives us a little bit of visibility, and I think it helps our players because we're not just doing activities on the court. You know, we're getting out into the community, we're witnessing things that are going on out there. I think it just helps us all around and just appreciating what we have. You know how, I guess it builds your self-esteem too, to be able to go out and to offer yourself to the community or different people and just help someone in some way. And our team retreat is something we didn't mention either. That's something we do annually, is go out and have a camp out type situation. The last 2 years we went to a ropes course, which was very challenging and really united the team. And And then I have kids who have never experienced things like that. I had 3 people who never slept outdoors before, never sat around a campfire all night. And so I think that added to the overall, you know, just being more well-rounded as a student athlete at IPFW.
Now you mentioned NCAA rules before. One of the new rules this year was the restriction on the number of weeks you could practice, and it used to start on October 15th.
Right.
This year they cut that back to, or moved it back to November 1st. How did you, what were your thoughts on that regulation?
Well, with the Division II and Division I, both of us were permitted to start November 1st. However, Division I was not allowed to begin their season until December 1st, which gave them 4 weeks of practice prior to the first competition. At Division II, we could start as early as November 21st. So that only allowed us 3 weeks to prepare. So I wish that perhaps they would just move us, you know, up a week as far as our practice time starts, or just put us all on the same schedule. I don't think there's a coach in America this past fall that's pleased at all with the November 1st practice start date. And rumor has it that they're going to go back to October 15. The intent there was to have less demand and fewer hours spent in practice for the athlete, so they could focus on academics and not be playing basketball year-round. However, you know, some of the consequences have been they have less time to get the job done, and we're just cramming more things in a shorter period of time. So really, you know, you question whether is it helping the athlete.
Does it put you at a disadvantage then when this, I guess, would happen so much in Division I, but in Division II you tend to play a lot of NAIA schools who've been practicing,
Right.
but some of them have had games, they've played games already. So does that put you at a bit of a disadvantage?
I would think so, and that's what, even though we could start November 21st this year, I opted not to, as many other coaches did, because they didn't feel they'd be prepared to play some of those teams who have been practicing forever. I spoke with an NAIA coach just a few weeks ago, and they told me that they were already at that board state. You know, we're nowhere near the board state. We're still learning things, and we play next Tuesday. So there is a little bit of a disadvantage there, and you just have to take your chances. Has advantages, too. Play a team a little bit early, prepare yourself, get that game-like situation under your belt, and then when you're ready for conference and some of the stronger Division II teams, things might gel a little bit better for you.
Okay. Well, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll take a look ahead to this year's IPFW team.
Everyone makes mistakes, Matthew. Don't pay any attention to the other children.
For this bright 6-year-old, the ABCs have never been as simple as ABC. Where do you go when you're different from the other kids? He got help at a Center for Learning Disabilities. They got help from the United Way. All because the United Way got help from you. The United Way. It brings out the best in all of us.
Talk about unusual. How often do you see transparent televisions?
Americans have more money to spend on leisure activities than ever before.
When possible, children should trick or treat during daylight hours and be accompanied by at least one adult.
A boat, archaeologists believe, is from the time Jesus and his disciples fished on the Galilee.
For best results, fertilize your lawn when it is actively growing.
Many people suffer from allergies. Few understand them.
All right, welcome back. I'd like to take a look ahead now at the IPFW team. One thing that jumps out at you this year, I guess you look at the roster, you only see 11 names. You know, just 11 players on the team. What is the effect of that going to be?
Well, I think there are pros and cons, advantages, disadvantages in having so few players on your roster. One thing that keeps me encouraged is I look back at the year that Tennessee women, I believe, were down to about 9 or 10 players and went all the way to the Final Four. And I may not be correct on this, but I thought they won the national championship that year. So a lot of things can happen. It only takes 5 players on the court during the game. And last year I probably averaged playing 8 to 9 players, you know, per game in a tight situation. Disadvantages at practice, if you have a few injuries. You know, we have to have our coaches play a few times, and I'm fortunate to have Lisa Miller with us this year as a student assistant. She's very eager to get back on the court, and if I do need her as a sub, she's more than willing to come out and help us, which she does do on a regular basis. Advantages would also be, even at practice, working with fewer people, I really feel that our players can be taught a great deal, maybe a lot more in a short period of time, because you can spend more individual time with each athlete in perfecting skills and developing your players, especially the freshmen. So it can have its advantages, and I have seen that advantage already. We've only been practicing 2.5 weeks, but I'm really afforded the opportunity to spend more time individually with our athletes. And hopefully, in the end, we're able to execute at a higher level when it comes to game time.
Now you mentioned the disadvantage of being shorthanded at practice. How specifically, how is that a problem? That's something a lot of people might not realize.
Well, one thing for sure, your players are going to be in really good condition, because when we run a lot of drills that when you have constant replacement of people in a certain drill, all spots have to be filled. And one thing that I really admire the girls for, they put forth a great deal of effort to make sure that the drill is run properly. And as I mentioned, sometimes spots have to be filled to make it work. And they're constantly aware of the fact of where they need to be so that the drill can continue on and have a perfect flow. And that has a lot of positive results. Number one, endurance. Number two, communication. A terrific communication on the court, and people calling out where spots need to be filled to keep the drill going. So in that respect, I think it has its advantages. Sometimes when you want to go 5-on-5, of course, in a scrimmage situation, you may run into some difficulties. But I find myself at this point in our practice doing a lot of breakdown drills, which requires, maybe 4 or 5 athletes and then just some passers or a dummy defense. And I think we can learn a great deal, in that fashion. The breakdown drills are very good for learning fundamentals and getting a better understanding of the offense and the defense. If we have injuries, we're in trouble. Our coaches have to come in sometimes in scrimmage, which they don't mind doing. We've had a few injuries. Right now we're fairly healthy with the exception of Pam Edwards. Just recently, this past Sunday, unfortunately, she ended her season and rupturing a muscle in her calf area. She's had a lot of trouble with her Achilles tendons in both feet over the last 3 years. And unfortunately, this is something that we weren't expecting. Just one night at practice, she just was taking a jump shot and her calf muscle just ruptured. So she is out for the season, and there's a possibility that she could return next year, redshirt and come back and play her 4th year of basketball. So that was something we didn't expect. We're fortunate to have a walk-on athlete. Brooke Liebert is with us this year, a fine athlete, a cross-country athlete here at IPFW. And she's coming along real well, and very good athlete, a very intense athlete, and really helps us a great deal at practice, and I think she's going to help us out during the season as well.
Are there any chances of you adding any players to the roster once the next semester starts?
At this point, I don't expect to. My plans are not to add anyone else. The girls that we have right now are very, they feel challenged. They're very optimistic. Sometimes when you have a few adversities, it brings you together closer and it makes you even more determined. Our team theme this week is determination. Our team right now is very determined to just put forth our best effort this year and see what might happen.
Now let's take a look at your team. If you could start, you could just give us a rundown on your returning players, what you expect their roles to be, and how they might fit in this year given the changes in the lineup.
Well, I definitely feel that Michelle Conley and Kim Recker, both being juniors for us, neither one of them started for us last year, but it's very possible they'll be our starters this year in the post position. The nice thing about both of them, I've incorporated a new offense this year that will allow me to put 3 taller people in at the same time. Michelle Conley and Kim Recker both have very good range, and so they're not going to be limited to just the post-up work in the paint. They're excellent outside shooters from 15, 16 feet, 17 feet. Michelle Conley's even been noted to take a few 3-pointers, and I'm going to allow that to happen this year. I think we're going to have a lot more movement. At the point position, Amy Perkins, returns with only 5 minutes of playing time, but she is right now the top candidate for a starting position at point guard. I think Amy's going to add a little more excitement to our game. Her nickname is Pistol, and she can do some really magical things with the basketball. I really look for our running game to pick up a little bit because of her ability to get the ball up court, and her her passes are very good, and she has a great ability to see the entire floor and to see the open person. At the guard forward positions, we have Dawn Dressler, Amy Hogan, both of which started half of our games last year at one time or another in the 2 or 3 spot. Both of them will get considerable playing time. Right now, Dawn is suffering just a little bit from some shin splints, and her knee's been bothering her a little bit. I don't think it's anything serious. Both of them are good outside shooters. You know, Amy Hogan really focuses on the three-point shot for us, and she's been looking very good at practice. And now that she's our only senior on the floor, you know, she's really risen to the occasion now to be our senior leader, and has a great deal of determination, you know, to make things happen for us. As far as our freshmen go, they're going to have to get some playing time, most definitely. Lindy Jones is looking very good for us right now, and I believe we'll get some considerable playing time at the 2 spot. Jenny Newhart will be first, you know, off the bench in the post position to give Kim and Michelle a break. Yazonda Daniels could do that also, and then we have Kim McDonald at the point or the swing guard to perhaps give Amy Perkins a break. I'm really hoping too with this new offense that I have, when Amy Perkins is not in the game, you know, go with a 2-guard offense, and we won't focus on just 1 point guard. There'll be 2 guards out there running the offense for us.
What changes can we expect to see this year in terms of your style of play, or will there be any changes from last year's team?
Well, sometimes with, you know, lack of depth, we probably won't be pressing as much. And you know, we didn't press an awful lot last year. Maybe just with teams that we thought we could be really effective and get an early lead and take a very solid lead against some of the weaker teams. You can look for some of the same thing as far as our half-court man-to-man defense. In fact, we're hoping that it's a little more intense from last year. And now this is my 2nd year, and they've learned things under me. I'm hoping that they can take it another level and perfect it just a little bit more. We're working right now and toying around with a matchup zone that is looking good at practice, and I hope will be effective for us this year. Offensively, you can expect some of the same things with the incorporation of another offense that we've added, and perhaps our outside shooting will be something that we can add this year. Last year, even at the NC2A game down in Kansas, I felt that we lost the game largely because of the fact we could not get an outside game going. You know, they fell back in their zone. This year, I think that we're going to see a pretty good perimeter game from us. As I mentioned, Amy Hogan's looking good. Lindy Jones is capable of shooting the 3-point shot. Dawn Dressler's outside shot is looking very good. Amy Perkins is certainly going to be a scoring threat. You know, something I don't want to overlook. Last year at the point position, we did not get a lot of points out of our point guard. And Amy Perkins is going to be someone that they're going to have to guard. And I think, too, our tempo is going to, hopefully when people come out and see us this year, that we're going to have, you know, an up-tempo, a little bit more up-tempo game than what we had last year. I think we're going to be a little quicker. Our post people are able to get up and down the court a little faster as well. You know, Michelle Conley and Kim Recker, Jenny Newhart, Yazonda Daniels can all run the floor very well.
Okay, let's take a look at the GLVC race. I know you've seen the coaches' polls and the SID's polls. Who do you think are going to be some of the top teams in the league, and teams that might be sleepers?
Well, I definitely feel, and I know everyone agrees with this, you know, St. Joseph has everyone back with the exception of their point guard, and they have some good recruits in. I think we're going to help fill that position. They have their seniors, Sloan Hoy and Tia Glass. Last year they were very solid, went to the Final 8 in the NCAA tournament. I think you can expect the same thing this year, if not better. And right after them, Bellarmine, they were very strong last year, finished in the top 4. They did lose, you know, their All-American, Shannon O'Bannon. However, she missed most of the season last year due to a broken ankle, and they still fared very well. So they're going to be very strong this year, and a good recruiting class came in this year as well. Northern Kentucky traditionally is always sound. You know, Nancy Winslow's been there for about 10 or 11 years and has a solid program, and you can always expect good competition from them. I think one of the sleepers this year would be Indianapolis. They have everyone back. You know, they were young last year, but they have everyone returning. And in addition to that, they have some quality recruits in their freshman class. And I think that if they get things going, last year they beat Northern Kentucky twice. You know, Bellarmine wasn't able to do that. St. Joe, ourselves, we were not able to do that. They defeated them twice. So they have something there, and it's just a matter of getting it going. And I really think that they're going to show some good things this year that people might not be expecting.
Okay. On the last minute here, you have an exhibition game scheduled for this Sunday, and it's been kind of an amusing story getting that game on the schedule. If you could tell us a little bit about that.
Well, and originally we were to play a Soviet select team, they called themselves, and it was an exhibition game scheduled for this Sunday, November 22nd. I guess it's good news to say that this particular team was involved in a tournament in Europe, and they qualified for the final, and for that reason they will not be able to make their trip to the U.S. They're trying to get a substitute team, and in doing that they first attempted to have the Bulgarian team come in to play the original Soviet select schedule. I understand that they had some problems with their visas and trying to arrive at the U.S., and things didn't go through, and they weren't able to to come into the country. So now we're waiting to hear that perhaps a Finland team is already in the country, is traveling around playing a lot of Division I schools. There's a good possibility that we could be playing them on Sunday instead of the Soviet select team.
Okay. I'd like to remind everyone there will be a game Sunday, 7:30 at the gym, an exhibition game, and we'd like to thank everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you next Thursday.
This is the increasingly competitive world we live in, and this is the country we want ahead of the competition. These are the people we'll be depending on to keep this country ahead of the competition. These are the colleges and universities we're relying on for the people we're depending on to keep this country ahead of the competition. So if you want America to stay #1 in the world, do something about it. Give to the college of your choice.
You were the first in this family to get into college.
I'm so proud of you.
I can't go, can I? Just can't afford to send you.
I didn't mean to let you down.
I understand. Maybe next year. Maybe.
Hard-working students deserve a chance. Please, support the United Negro College Fund. A mind is a terrible thing to waste.
Where to?
Body shop, 71st and 1st.
Hey, no use. We love your commercials. Safety belts, right?
That's where you're going, man.
I tell her, missus, she loves you guys. She doesn't buckle up either.
Nobody's listening.
You need anybody? Listen, Odie Driver's part-time. Really inactive? It's just a little slow. Just put seatbelts in my cab. Nobody uses them. Guess they feel safe with me.
If we'd had half a brain, we'd have buckled up.
Hey, Papa Breath, I do have half a brain.
You could learn a lot from a dummy. Buckle your safety belt.
Hello and welcome to Coach K's Corner. I'm Dave Hilbert, IPFW Sports Information Director. Now, Eileen, you've had a couple of adjustments you've had to make to your lineup in the last couple of weeks. Some key injuries. I know we talked about some last week. What kind of change have you had to make?
Well, it's definite now that Pam Edwards will be out for the season. They believe now that she does have a ruptured Achilles tendon, and so she'll be redshirted. As far as adjustments, you know, Kim Rucker and Michelle Conley we have here with us today, we're both vying for a starting position. I guess it made it easier for me to decide because all three of them, including Pam, was doing very well at practice. And they certainly will be in the starting lineup for us, and that's one adjustment we'll be making. Dawn Dressler has been suffering from shin splints and some tendonitis in the knee. She certainly was challenging for the starting position at the 2 or 3 guard. Amy Hogan is right there with her. Last year they shared starting time, and so it looks like Amy Hogan will be starting for us tonight at Taylor.
So who do you think your starting 5 will be then?
Well, we'll go with Michelle and Kim at the post position, and Amy Hogan at the 3 guard, Lindy Jones, our freshman, who's doing very well at the 2 guard, and then Amy Perkins, who only averaged 5 minutes a game last year, is doing extremely well for us, and I think she really has risen to the occasion to start for us at point.
Now, how is it different for you this year when last year you had most of your starters most of them were returning starters, the others had at least had a couple of years experience. This year you've got at least one freshman, one starter who, like you said, has not played very often. How does that change your approach to coaching?
Well, I think we take the same approach. However, you know, I look at the strengths that we have and the different players that we have and try to utilize those strengths. I think this year that perhaps we'll have a more up-tempo game. I think Amy Perkins will do a very good job of bringing the ball up court for us. And Kim and Michelle both are able to get them down the court very well, and I'm hoping that we can get our post play involved in the fast break. I'm really not looking to make a lot of other adjustments. I really feel that the kids that we have are going to fill the shoes from last year, and we'll have just as good a season as last year.
Now, Michelle, last 2 years, you played about most of the games, about 10, 15 minutes a game. This year, like you said, your coach has penciled you into the starting lineup. How are you looking forward to that?
I'm definitely looking forward to it, and more playing time and opportunity to get in there and play and show what I can do this year. But we are lacking experience in the post position with losing Pam, so I think it's definitely going to hurt us that way.
Now, another difference with this year's team and last year's team is you don't have the one superstar. Last year you had Lisa Miller, and this year Pam Edwards looked to be maybe not a superstar, but at least one with a key player. This year you don't have one player like that. How does that affect your approach to the game?
Well, I think it can be to our advantage. One thing for certain, scouting reports and game films from last year aren't going to be of much value to our opponents since we have a totally different group of people in there. I think that could be to our advantage, and I also feel that we'll have more of a balanced scoring attack. That our opponents won't be able to focus on just a Lisa Miller or just a Pam Edwards. They're going to have to respect everyone because all of us can score, and we'll be looking to do that.
Now, last year you had about 12, 13 players on the team, but you only ended up, most games usually only played about 8. This year you only have, I guess, 10 healthy players right now. Do you look to be playing most of those 10 players, or do you look to be going 7, 8 again this year?
I guess it's really too early to say, considering the fact that we have 4 freshmen. I'm going to have to wait and see how they respond to the college game. Initially, I'll start out giving everyone an opportunity, and if time or if the opportunity allows, I'll put some of our freshmen in. So they do get more playing time. But at this point, I'll probably stick with my same game plan until I know more.
Now, you guys had an inter-squad game last Thursday. Any comments on that game? Any surprises? Anything you wanted to look to improve on?
Well, I thought we did very well. Had a lot of good compliments from some of the people that were watching in comparison to last year and where we were at this time. I want to give our team a lot of credit considering the fact that we only had 2.5 weeks of practice. And they were able to come out, and I was pleased to see that they had actually remembered their plays and the offense, and especially our freshmen. 4 freshmen coming in and having to learn a totally new system. I do want to give them a lot of credit. And I thought our freshmen looked good as well as our upperclassmen. So considering the fact we had no subs and they had to play an entire game, gave me an indication of where our endurance was. And I just thought we did a good job overall.
Any specific areas that you were pleased to see, specific players?
Well, I guess I really can't pinpoint one particular person. Everyone contributed that night. Everyone was a scoring threat, and that's what we certainly need this year. Defensive-wise, everyone was very intense and aggressive and really seemed to get after it. I would just have to say I'm overall very pleased.
Kim, one thing Eileen mentioned was your practice time has been a lot shorter than last year. Last year you guys got about 5-6 weeks of practice, and this year just about 2. Has that any effect on your game?
So far, I don't think it has been because I know the plays from last year, thank goodness. And the freshmen have no problem catching on. No, I don't think so. I don't know.
Michelle?
Like I said, the freshmen have caught on really quick. In fact, I'm surprised all the new offenses and defenses that they've had to learn in 2.5 weeks, and that, like Coach said, they were able to remember them. I think last year it helped us to play better as a team already for our first game, but because we're so small this year that I don't think once we get started into the season that we're going to have a problem.
Now, how would you
compare?
Excuse me. How would you compare the team now, going into the first game, as opposed to last year, in terms of their preparation with the shorter practice, or their, I guess, the health and any other area?
Well, we certainly aren't as healthy as we were last year. However, I want to say that because this is the second time around for everyone, their upperclassmen, they have really caught on with our offenses and defenses from last year, and it's really pleasing as a coach at practice to watch the experience take over. And that's one thing that's certainly going to help us this year, and comparing us to last year and where we were at this time. And another thing I want to say too, I was a first-year head coach at the Division II level, had really no idea what to expect as far as competition was concerned. And now I'm prepared for that. I certainly have a good indication of what our opponents have in store for us, and I think that we're better prepared in that respect.
Can you guys open up tonight with Hillsdale, or with Taylor? Next week you open up at home against Hillsdale. Do you know anything about either team? I know Hillsdale's a team you played last year. Taylor, you didn't play. It's a team that IPFW hasn't played for a couple of years. Have you been able to learn anything about either team?
Well, we have our scouting reports, and our coaching staff has been out to watch both teams play. We do have Taylor on the road, and that always makes it a little bit more difficult. They're going to have their home court advantage. In the past, they've been very successful. I understand that they're a little young this year, and so are we. So we're expecting a good game this evening. And then next Tuesday, December 1st, against Hillsdale, we played their place last year, struggled a little bit with them at first until we got things going. I believe we won by 13 points. They really didn't lose very many people from last year. But hopefully, with our home court advantage, things will be in our favor on Tuesday night.
How much of a difference does it make when you prepare each week in practice as to who you're playing for that week? Do you do any different things for different opponents, or do you just try to play your own game, focus on individual players of opposing teams?
I would have to say probably pre-conference play, we do a little bit more customizing as far as the level of play is concerned. You'll see more pressing out of us before we start our conference. If you remember last year, our last 6 games of the season, we won all 6 of them, and we kept it very basic. We just played a half-court man-to-man and just ran our offense, and we're quite successful with that. So I think you'll see a little bit of a change come conference play, because just the different level of competition and just the different caliber of players.
And what about you guys when you're going into practice, say Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, for a conference game where you know who the other players are, and maybe even later in the season when you've already played them one time? Do you look to try to do anything for a specific opponent, make any changes in your style?
I think it definitely makes you practice a lot harder when you're going in playing St. Joe and going to play against players like Tia Glass and Sloan Hoy. It makes you practice a lot harder, work on your boxing out more, because that's what you're really going to need in the game. Other than that, I think practices are usually pretty basic. Work on our offense, make sure we're running it to getting the key things right.
Now, one question I asked Andy when we filmed the show with him was, when you have young players, he'd mentioned that one of his freshmen, when they played the scrimmage game against the former Indiana players, some big name guys, one of his freshmen was 3-4 years old when these guys were playing, and he didn't know who they were, and he thought it made it easier for him to go out there and just play, not knowing who these guys were. When you have a lot of young players this year, do you think it'll be easier for them, not knowing who some of the players you mentioned are, not knowing about St. Joe and some of these teams? They may know that they're top teams, but not knowing specific things about them. Does that make it easier when they approach the game, or do you think it's harder?
I think it could make it easier for them. Maybe they won't have the fear, as long as upperclassmen don't tell them about them. But it certainly could have an advantage.
Okay, what are some of the specific things you do to scout an opponent, either a GLVC school or a non-conference school?
Well, if our schedule allows us to, we'll go out and watch them. It's really convenient if we have an opponent playing here in town against St. Francis or Indiana Tech, or even some places close as Tri-State, to go watch an opponent. So we do try to get out as early as we can, and after that, once we get into our season, we really rely on scouting reports over the telephone and a great deal of game films that we have an exchange with other schools.
And what about with the conference schools?
Well, there's a conference rule that you must share one game film, and that's a non-conference game, and it's any tape that I would request of any of our conference schools. So we all have to reciprocate in that fashion.
Okay, now taking a look at the preseason schedule in general, how do you think it would help you prepare for the conference season, the schedule you have this year?
For our conference season? Well, since our conference is extremely tough, I don't make it a point to make our pre-conference schedule one that consists of 5 or 6 top 20 teams. We do play a few NAIA teams, and we do that for different reasons. First of all, we like to play some of the local schools, Tri-State, St. Francis, Indiana Tech, and so forth. I think that it helps us get things together, and especially this year I'm very pleased because we are so young and have an entirely, basically new team. It's going to help us, playing at that level and prepare us for the conference because it's so difficult once we get in the conference. We're talking 3 or 4 of our teams, Northern Kentucky, Bellarmine, St. Joe, and ourselves at different times have been in the top 20, and we all know how well St. Joe did last year. So we certainly have enough competition within our own conference, and I try to prepare pre-conference with teams that aren't ranked as highly.
How would you compare this year's schedule to last year's? I know you put this year's schedule together. The preseason schedule you had last year you inherited from the previous coach, but how would you compare it?
Well, we started out at Oakland, and Oakland has been a top 20 team in the past. We played Aquinas College our first game of the season at the Oakland tournament, and then played Oakland in the finals, and we lost to them. Right after that, we went on to Ferris State and played in their tournament, and were successful the first night in defeating Pittsburgh Johnstown, a very successful team. Last year, I believe, finished 8th in the country, and we were able to defeat them. So I think early on we got a great deal of competition, and again, we could maybe attribute that competition to the success that we had in the conference later on.
Okay. Well, we're going to take a quick break, then we'll be back with Coach Kleinfelter and juniors Kim Recker and Michelle Conley.
This is the increasingly competitive world we live in, and this is the country we want ahead of the competition. These are the people we'll be depending on to keep this country ahead of the competition. These are the colleges and universities we're relying on for the people we're depending on to keep this country ahead of the competition. So if you want America to stay #1 in the world, do something about it. Give to the college of your choice.
You were the first in this family to get into college.
I'm so proud of you.
I can't go, can I?
Just can't afford to send you.
I didn't mean to let you down.
I understand. Maybe next year.
Maybe. Hard-working students deserve a chance. Please, support the United Negro College Fund. A mind is a terrible thing to waste.
Welcome back to Coach K's Corner. We're here now with juniors Michelle Conley and Kim Recker. Michelle, how did you end up coming to IPFW? I know you've been recruited by a couple of different schools. This was a couple years ago, but how did you make the decision to come to IPFW?
Actually, I made my decision really late. I planned on going to University of Massachusetts, and through different recruiting things, I was left with nowhere to go to school, and so I had called the coach. It wasn't until end of June when I got left with nowhere to go to school, and she luckily still needed a post player, and so I came in and I played for her over the summer, and then she was able to sign me after that. So it was just by luck of someone still needing a post player, really.
What was some of your background in high school? Where did you play?
In high school, I pretty much helped out at every position. I didn't come from a very successful high school team. My senior year, we were 4-12, and usually we were happy just to get the ball over half court. So pretty much I played every position, primarily post, but so I could be in getting the rebounds. But wherever someone was needed, I tried to help out in high school.
And Kim, how about you? What was your background in high school, and then how did you make the decision to come here?
I played at Ottawa Glandorf High School under Rhonda Unverfirth, or Ostridge, and she played at IPFW, so she kind of helped me with coming to this school, whatever. I was being recruited by some Division III colleges, but I wanted to play at a higher division if at all possible, and IPFW made an offer and I accepted. So,
Eileen, when you go out to recruit, what are some of the advantages that you think you can offer a student coming to IPFW, especially after having been at places like Penn State and Indiana, big-time schools? When you go to recruit kids now, what advantages do you offer?
Well, I want to say, first of all, I find it a very good selling tool to talk about our facilities, especially when it comes to our conference. I think we have one of the finest facilities, including our weight room and so forth, in our conference. And then in addition to that, you know, I tell our kids too, the kids that I recruit, that a degree from Indiana University or Purdue University certainly will open some doors for them once basketball is over. You mentioned I was at Division I for quite a while, and I also tell my recruits that everything that I do as a coach, as far as how we dress, how we travel, how we eat, how we operate our practices and conditioning programs and so forth, you know, I do with a Division I mentality, and I try to do everything as first class as we possibly can. In addition to that, I tell them about our team. I think we have a group of fine young ladies, quality people. I talk about the support that we get from our campus, faculty and athletic department, and in addition to all the media coverage and support that we get within the city of Fort Wayne. All of those things help in our recruiting efforts. I'd have to say that there are several things that I am very pleased with, some resources that we have available here at IPFW that we did not have at Division I level. I would have to say that this talk show is one example of that, and having our games televised on Channel 6 certainly helps our recruiting efforts.
Is that one thing, I know you mentioned this, and a lot of, you go to some of the bigger time schools, and women's basketball, women's sports in general tend to kind of get lost in the shuffle. Is that one thing that you try to stress, that at a school like this, the program would receive more exposure, and do you think that's something they believe?
I would say most definitely. In comparing perhaps to our games at Indiana University, I served as an assistant down in Bloomington for 3 years. And Assembly Hall is a wonderful facility, but when you have just 1,000 people in an arena that large, there's not a lot of noise. And that's another selling point that we have. Our games are noisy. We're in a small gym. We have the pep band. We have the cheerleaders, and then having the double headers with the men's game, I think really helps our crowds. And it's a neat atmosphere. It certainly is an exciting atmosphere, and one that I enjoy a great deal.
All right, now Michelle, when you came from high school into college, what were some of the biggest differences, you know, other than obviously the talent, but what were some of the differences in the game in college as opposed to high school?
The game's definitely a lot quicker. The posts, the guards, everyone can get up the floor very quick, and it's definitely a lot more physical. In high school, you don't make the contact the way you do in college, and the calls just don't get called in college. You're allowed to foul and hammer, and you're going to get away with it.
What kind of changes did you notice?
that was the big one there, it being more physical. I had to get used to being hit without crying. And
How long did it take you to get used to that?
About a whole year, actually, if not two.
What about yourself, Michelle? How long did it take you before you felt really comfortable playing the college game, that you'd made the adjustment?
Well, I think our freshman year practices were very, very physical, so I think I adjusted pretty quick. By game time, I think I was ready to throw some elbows.
What are some of the biggest, as a coach, what are some of the things that you notice that players have a difficult time adjusting to coming from high school?
Oh, probably, as they mentioned, certainly is much more physical, it's more demanding, a greater intensity, a faster game, probably a little more complex as far as strategy of the game. Perhaps we're learning more defenses, more offensive, more set plays, ways to read the defense in a way that they didn't in high school. And even sometimes the fundamentals, you know, just a basic pick and roll and setting a pick properly and making it effective and just executing things properly.
How difficult is it for you when you get a player who might be a talented player, but who came from a program where they just, like you said, didn't work a lot with fundamentals? and kind of has to catch up in some aspects of the game, either understanding some of the strategy of the game or the fundamentals. How difficult is that when you have other players who are already at that level?
Well, sometimes it can be frustrating, but I think the bottom line is the attitude that the student athlete, in the way that they approach wanting to learn that particular skill. If they have a good attitude and have the desire to learn, they're really going to put forth the effort to perfect that skill. And with that, I'll have a great deal of patience. In a couple days, they better learn it, and if they don't, then I'll be frustrated.
Now, Kim and Michelle, both of you have performed very well in the classroom. Last year, you both picked to the all-academic GLVC team. If you had to give some advice to a kid coming in from high school as to how to succeed both on the floor and in the classroom, what would you say to them?
Manage your time. And definitely you have to be disciplined and study. Make sure you do go to classes. I think that's the biggest thing. If you go to class and you know when your tests are, you should at least be able to get a decent grade in the classroom. A lot of kids skip the class and then they won't end up doing very well.
And Kim, did you, when you first started, was it a little overwhelming at all, or did you pretty much jump right in?
I pretty much jumped right in. I heard all those horror stories, how college was so much tougher than high school, but I studied a lot in high school too, so it wasn't that big of an adjustment for me.
Now, what are you studying, and what would you like to do when you're
Well,
done
right
playing ball?
now I'm studying to be a secondary math teacher, and maybe someday get into guidance counseling after that.
And Michelle?
Right now I'm studying psychology. Not quite sure what I'm going to do with it yet. Hopefully I'll look to be a sports psychologist at a larger university to help out the athletes.
Ellie, what were your plans when you were at this level, about a junior in college?
I would have to say that since I was a 9th grader in high school, I knew that I wanted to be a coach. And I knew that I wanted to coach, I thought, initially at the high school level. And then things just kind of fell in place, and I ended up as graduate assistant at Penn State University, and with every intention of going back to the high school level, but I never did. I just got hooked on collegiate athletics and stuck with it, and have been there for 11 years now. But I've always known I wanted to be a coach.
Now, in the last probably 10, 15 years, maybe not that long, you've seen a lot of growth in women's athletics. What are some of the reasons why? Any of you? Anything specific?
Growth in women's basketball?
Or just women's sports in general?
Well, I'd have to say that our skill has just improved over the years immensely. And that's largely due to the fact that people have begun to accept the fact that females can excel as well. And we have a greater amount of people now interested in coaching. There certainly are all the opportunities available now for the women that the men have, all the way down to 6th and 7th grade level. We have junior high teams now, freshman teams for the girls, which we did not have in the past. The AAU organization nationwide is very strong for the girls, and as a result, we have a lot of quality coaches wanting to get involved, and that just improves our game. And even on the collegiate level, if you look at especially Division I schools, they're able to provide salaries and perks and so forth for head women's basketball coaches at larger universities like a Tennessee and a Louisiana Tech that are very comparable to the men's program. And it's very attractive, to our coaches out there. And as a result, it's really upgraded our game.
You think people have tried to kind of stop comparing women's basketball to men's basketball, like I think used to be the case?
I think so in the past, and that's another thing I'm very pleased with at IPFW. I think we have a great deal of equality with our men's program. We don't have a program, a football program or a men's program that just dominates our athletic department. I think everyone, as I mentioned earlier, really supports each other in the athletic department, and it's a very unified group. It's almost like an athletic family, and when you go to one sport, you'll see all the other athletes and coaches, there in the stands supporting the other teams.
Okay, now you two have been here for, this is your 3rd year. Have you had any negative experiences being an athlete on this campus? Because I know at some places I've been, or other people I know, some people think you get special treatment from professors because you're an athlete. Some people think you can kind of coast through school, or some people just tend to have a negative impression of athletes on a campus. Have either of you ever experienced anything like that?
I didn't experience anything like that. I think, like you said, there are some professors who will give you a break or help you out because you are an athlete. I haven't had any here, be negative or not let me make up a test if I was going to miss on a road trip or anything like that. And as far as other students and stuff, I think a lot of students look up to athletes too. And they don't treat anyone negative.
Now, how would you, what would you say is, how is your life different from that of an average student? Student's not an athlete, and how is it the same?
Well, I spend my time playing basketball and studying. Go to school, come back, eat lunch, study, go to practice, come back, eat supper, study, go to bed. I don't know.
How about you? In terms of when you compare some of the things you do to some of the things that the non-athletes do, as far as having maybe more time on their hands? Or
I'm not sure it's that much different because I think the non-athletes, most of them primarily have jobs and stuff where basketball here is like our job. We're not, I don't think there's any of us on the team, you know, working outside of all that. And so I think as long as you manage your time, that you're able to, you know, go out and study and play ball and study and eat and, you know, able to have some free time on your own.
Do you feel now that you're juniors, do some of the players look to you for either some leadership, either by example or on or off the floor?
Yeah, I noticed it a lot. Before being freshmen, I know I looked up to our upperclassmen, and now when we're out there, and you know, we'll have a freshman. Where do I go? Where do I go? And you know, you have to help them. Or while you're playing defense, okay, you cut here, now cut out here, and I think they do.
Is that new for you? When that was you 2 years ago, asking people where to go?
Yeah, that was me then.
Even last year, I was asking where to go. And now this year, I can help them. So.
All right. Well, thanks for being with us this week. I'd like to remind everyone the IPFW women's team will open the home portion of their season next Tuesday, December 1st, when they face Hillsdale College at 6 p.m. Hello and welcome to Coach K's Corner. I'm Dave Hilbert, IPFW Sports Information Director. Coach Kleinfelder will be with us in a few minutes, but right now we have Lisa Miller, former IPFW All-American. Now Lisa, I don't want to embarrass you, so we'll go over a brief list of some of your accomplishments. You're a two-time All-American, GLVC Player of the Year last year, hold 3 NCAA Division II records, 16 IPFW records, 9 Great Lakes Valley Conference records. With all those accomplishments in your career, what are some of the things that you stick out the most?
I'd probably have to say definitely one of the most, the biggest accomplishment was the All-American reward that was given to me and last year, and I still feel the same way, that without the teammates that I had, I would have never received all the accomplishments that I did, and with Coach Kleinfelder being there and the teammates that I had, it was a really rewarding year for me.
What about some of the moments as far as individual games? Anything that really sticks out in your mind?
Probably the biggest game that sticks out in my mind is the St. Joe game, because that was such a deciding factor in whether we'd make it to the NCAA tournament. And I can't look over the NCAA tournament game, even though it was a loss for us and a tough loss. We really had a good time, and the support people that went with us gave us a lot of confidence while we were there, and it just didn't end up turning our way. But I think in the future, if they should happen to make it back to the NCAA tournament, I think they have a lot of things going for them.
How do you think just your experience in basketball on the floor and off the floor, and some of the awards you've won, any of that, how do you think that'll help you along down the road?
I think basketball, you know, not just basketball, any sport that you play can help you a lot. And we talk about basketball, and we talk about it as a team sport. And I think that's one of the biggest things that is going to help me in my future job, hopefully as a teacher, is how to get along with people and team unity and teamwork, because as teaching is almost like playing the game of basketball. You have to be able to work with other people, and that's one of the most important things, I think, and when you pursue almost any job. Other things that have helped me is just time management and managing my time around practice and getting my studies in, and it's just a lot of things fall into the basketball, even though you don't really talk about basketball that much as far as helping you out. The things that go into it, like team unity and time management and motivation and enthusiasm, all help you in your job search in the future.
Who are some of the toughest players you played against, and are any of them still in the league today?
I would say probably the toughest players I played against from St. Joe, Tia Glass and Sloan Hoy. I've been playing against them for a long time now. Tia played at Northrop, so I had a chance to play against her in high school, and Sloan played at Hamilton. I always played with her during the summer. They'll probably be two of the top post people in the conference. But I think, you know, when I see the girls that I'm playing with and help coaching this year, Michelle Conley and Kim Rucker, I think they can stand up to them because they've done a lot of hard work this summer. And we have a very good team, I think, and they'll do just fine. Some of the other top players in the conference, I think Bellarmine will have a good team with Kate Clemmer, who's also from Northrop, and Kukowitz, who's also a very good post player. So I think the conference is very tough, and IPFW has also got a very tough team that can stand up to the girls in the conference.
Now, last summer, you played with the United States Athletes in Action team. If you could tell us a little bit about that, some of your experiences, some of the unusual things that might have happened.
Yeah, I had a real good experience in South America this summer. It's an experience I'll probably never forget. We traveled. I mean, we started in Ecuador, and we played about 4 games in Ecuador, and we're pretty successful throughout our trip. We played a total of 18 games, won 14 and lost 4. Played with some very neat people, and a lot of girls from Division I, Division II, and some Division III players. And within a week, we picked up the offenses real well. Now, I had an advantage because Coach Kleinfelder was our coach, and I had an easy time memorizing the plays because I had been through them for a year. And the girls on my team picked them up real well. And like I said, our final record ended up being 14-4. And the main focus of our trip was to share our Christian faith, and I felt real good after I came home how we had influenced some of the people in South America. And when you travel to a different country there, you see how fortunate we are here in America, and just thankful that I was able to touch maybe some lives, at least 1 or 2, hopefully, when I was there.
Now this year, this fall is probably the first time in probably the past 10, 12, 15 years that you weren't preparing for the start of a new season. Around September, October. What was that like this year?
That was a difficult adjustment. I've been keeping very busy with my student teaching, so that's helped out a lot. And I've been fortunate enough for Coach Kleinfelder to ask me to help being a student assistant. And I've even been able to practice with some of the players when they needed some, a passer or maybe needed someone to scrimmage against. I've been real fortunate to have basketball and continue to play, even though I'm not going to be able to play in the games. And I, thank the team for, letting me scrimmage against them. They're always very supportive, even though I'm not playing on their team anymore. They're always encouraging me, and I appreciate that a lot.
Now, as a student assistant, what's your role going to be?
I've had a lot of roles in helping Coach Kleinfelder. I've helped her with some scouting and some recruiting, and a lot of office work. And like I said, at practice, I can help out as much as I can, and I'm very fortunate to have all these things, as experience, scouting and recruiting, even though maybe someday I might not be a college coach, but I think having these things, meeting new people and seeing what the college coaching job is like, I think that's helped a lot.
Now, with a team with just 10 players, but half the team freshmen, how have you seen some of the younger players progress to this point?
There's a very good freshman class, and we have 4 of them, and Lindy Jones is going to be an excellent player. Jenny Newhart is a very good center, and she's helped Kim Recker and Michelle Connolly progress a lot because she scrimmages against him, and Jenny is an excellent player, and I think all these girls, all these freshmen, when they become sophomore, junior, seniors, are going to even step up and take a greater role. And Yozana Daniels is very quick, and she's probably one of the quickest players IPFW has ever had. And we have Kim McDonald also, who's a very good point guard, and she's a very steady player, doesn't make a lot of mistakes, and she has a very good three-point shot. And in our first game, we had a lot of freshmen contribute already, and some of them have real strong points, and some of them are still working on their game, and they're doing very well as freshmen.
Now, without having a one standout player on the team like yourself for the past few years, and what we thought Pam Edwards was going to be this year before she went down with the injury, do you think that's helpful to the younger players or not?
Yeah, I think so. It's unfortunate that Pam got hurt, and I think the whole team is stepping up to take control, and Amy Hogan is a very good senior leader for them, and I think she's taken control as far as leadership goes. And the junior class is very strong, and I think that's what makes the team so good, is because they're very well balanced. They have good balanced scoring, and there's been some very good posts. Jenny, Michelle, and Kim that have stepped up and gotten some rebounds for us in the previous game, and Dawn Dressler is probably one of the best rebounders on the team, and I think it's good if you have a team that's very balanced in all areas, and each one has a role on the team, and it's important that they play that role and they know that role, and this year I see them progressing very well in that area.
What are some of the similarities to last year's team and some of the differences?
Yeah, there's every year I think the teams are going to be different. You never have 2 teams that are the same, and the team from this year does a lot of things that we did better last year, and they're still working. This is just their first game, and they'll have their next game this week. But I see a lot of similarities in they're a good rebounding team, and with Pam out, I think they'll have to pick up some because Pam was such a good rebounder. I think they can be a good rebounding team with the height that they have. They have a driving game, I think, that similar to what we had last year. Lindy's a very good driver for them, and Dawn Dressler. And Amy Perkins, she's a good point guard for them, and she can make a lot of things happen. And similar to last year, Coach Kleinfelter wants them to be able to control the ball and not have so many turnovers, and I think that's the key to the game for them this year. There are a lot of different things that go in, to this year's team and last year's team, but I think if we compare the 2 teams, it's hard to say because they're a totally different ball club than what we were last year.
Okay, well, Lisa, I'd like to wish you good luck in basketball and also in your teaching career. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with IPFW head women's basketball coach Eileen Kleinfelder.
You were the first in this family to get into college.
I'm so proud of you.
I can't go, can I? I just can't afford to send you.
I didn't mean to let you down.
I understand. Maybe next year.
Maybe. Hard-working students deserve a chance. Please, support the United Negro College Fund. A mind is a terrible thing to waste.
Welcome back to Coach K's Corner. I'm joined now by Eileen Kleinfelder and senior guard Amy Hogan. Now, Amy, what do you see your role on the team as this year?
I see it as being a strong leader on the court to help all the younger players, and I feel I have to look for the outside shot to open up the inside for Michelle and Kim and hopefully get it into them so they can score.
Now, last year you kind of alternated between starting and coming off the bench. Does it really matter to you whether or not you start? Do you have a preference?
No, it's nice to start, but coming off the bench is just as important as if you start, as long as you play well.
Does it affect at all the way you prepare for the game, whether or not you know you're going to be starting or coming in later?
No, prepare the same.
Now, when you came to the program, Amy's first 2 years didn't get a whole lot of playing time, but last year, her junior year, your first year here, you moved her right into the starting lineup. What did you see in her play that made you do that?
Well, coming in as a new coach, I basically just started from scratch. Amy did some very good things for us, and she proved that she could shoot from the outside, was probably one of our better three-point shooters. And that was a goal of mine coming in as a new coach, was to increase our three-point shooting attack. I would also say that Amy's passing, and then also at 5'10" for a guard, she does a very good job on the rebounding end of things. I also felt that Amy could help us out a great deal as a defensive player, being 5'10". I would match her up with some of the point guards and two guards on the other teams that perhaps were only 5'6", 5'7", and I thought that was an advantage for us to have a taller person on their main ball handlers.
Do you see her role being any different this year than last year?
I don't see it being any different. However, I probably expect more. Being that she is our only senior, I do expect a great deal of leadership from her, and she's done a very good job in assisting, especially our freshmen, in having to learn all the plays and offenses and defenses in just a very short time.
That was going to be my next question. Do you see yourself in kind of a leadership role now, either on the court and off the court?
Yeah, I see a lot of the younger players, especially the freshmen, looking to me to, tell them, what plays we're running or help them out. And, they ask me a lot of questions about, well, can we do this? Are we allowed to do that? Coach, she get mad if we do this, or so they come to me with a lot of questions.
Do you feel any added pressure to perform now that you're kind of cast in that role?
Somewhat, a little added pressure, but not much.
And what about off the court? Do players look to you for advice either in school or just generally getting along in college?
No, not really. They all seem to know what, they can do, and they all get to the classroom and get their stuff done, and they really don't need much help.
Now, as a coach, do you see Amy in more of a leadership role? And if so, how?
Well, as I mentioned, being our only senior, you do expect her to have the senior leadership. Because we have so many inexperienced players on the team this year, we're looking at our juniors who averaged anywhere from 8 to 10 minutes a game last year. And I look at our scoring averages last year and what we have in a starting lineup. And we have Kim Recker and Michelle Conley and Amy Perkins all averaging anywhere from 3 to 8 points a game, and 8 being a lot. And Amy Hogan certainly wasn't someone last year who came in double figures all the time. So I do, expect that out of Amy, whether she's a starter or not for us, to be the leader and to give us some confidence, because I really feel that we need that with our younger players. And then you look at 4 freshmen on the roster who really look up to our upperclassmen for some leadership.
Now, Amy, when you came out of high school and started at IPFW, what were some of the biggest changes you noticed going from high school to college?
The traveling was really the biggest change, because you go so much farther away and you're missing school to go to games. And that was about the biggest change I noticed.
And how do you or have you would assess the progress of some of the young players to this point of the year? With a team of almost half freshmen.
Well, I have to give them credit for learning a great deal in a short period of time, being that we only had 3 weeks of practice prior to our first game. And I told them the other day, and they've agreed that they are no longer freshmen, that they're sophomores for us. And I think that they've really accepted that challenge, and they've put forth a great deal of effort to learn as much as they can. I also told them the other day that the real challenge is for you to learn everything you have to learn about the IPFW women's basketball program, and then when we start talking about opponents and scouting reports, how much of that can you absorb? It's an ideal situation when you have experienced players who know your system so well that in a walkthrough at practice, they can pick up on the opponent's tendencies and actually memorize a great deal of their offense and inbounds plays and defensive tendencies.
Now, Amy, when your first couple of years here, especially your first year, you didn't get a whole lot of playing time. What are some of the things that you can do as a player to stay focused and be ready to go in at any time?
Oh, you can help with the people that are going in, telling them, well, this person tends to do this, and you let them know, and you can recognize other plays the other team's going to run and yell them out to the court and just be encouraged, yell encouraging things and just be supportive.
Does it ever get discouraging sometimes as a player to know that you could, or think that you should be out there playing?
Yeah.
Now, as a coach, what kind of things do you do, either in practice or in games, to try to keep the players who don't see a lot of time, to keep them focused and and ready to come in?
Well, we've only had one game so far, so I don't know that we have too many people disappointed in playing time. We only have 10 people on the roster, and 4 of those are freshmen, and 1's a walk-on for us this year, so at least 5 returning veterans. I don't think that it's going to be anything frustrating for Amy Hogan this year as far as playing time is concerned. In fact, there'll probably be moments when she's ready to come out of the game from exhaustion, and because we don't have a great deal of upperclassmen as far as depth is concerned, I don't foresee that being a problem for us this year. And freshmen, I don't think, expect to play a lot in the beginning. Now, you're looking at someone like Lindy Jones, who's starting for us as a freshman. So, and Jenny Newhart coming off the bench immediately in the post position. Kim McDonald and Yazonda Daniels will see some time, but you know, they will have to go through, like every other freshman, you know, gaining the experience and just polishing their skills a little bit.
What kind of things can you do or say to players that do get discouraged?
Well, I haven't really run into that problem too much. I just encourage them to continue to work on their skills, and I think it's important for me to be honest with them and tell them what I think it is they need to work on, and tell them what their strengths are and how we can utilize those strengths when they are in the game. Try to keep it a positive point. However, I think I need to also address the skills or the things that they need to focus on more in order to get more playing time. And when it comes to freshmen, it's just a matter of experience. It's a matter of being here with the system another year or two before, you know, juniors and seniors usually do contribute the most. And we're just in an unfortunate situation where we don't have as many upperclassmen this year.
Okay, well, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back to take a look at next week's games and take a look at last week's game.
This is the increasingly competitive world we live in, and this is the country we want ahead of the competition. These are the people we'll be depending on to keep this country ahead of the competition. These are the colleges and universities we're relying on for the people we're depending on to keep this country ahead of the competition. So if you want America to stay #1 in the world, do something about it. Give to the college of your choice.
All right, welcome back to Coach K's Corner. Eileen, you guys opened up last Tuesday with a big win, beat Taylor on the road, 86-73. Any general comments on the game?
Well, I'm very satisfied with the outcome of the game, of course. You know, I was very curious going into the game with an entirely new starting lineup, with the exception of one starter from last year, to see how we would do. And with a short preparation period of just 3 weeks, you know, I was pleased. Taylor, being NAI, had started practicing quite a while and had 5 games under their belt already. You know, it's always difficult playing, you know, on the road. So I want to commend our girls because they really did pull together and played well. We did a real good job on the boards. We out-rebounded Taylor by about 17. Had a real good shooting night, shot about 50% from the field. I was very pleased with that. Didn't get to the foul line as often as I would have liked to, but perhaps that will get better as we go along.
Now you had 3 players, Lindy Jones at 27, Michelle Conley 21, Kim Recker 20. That's 3 players with 68 out of your 86 points. Is that, obviously, you know, to have 3 players score 20 points is very unusual, but do you expect those 3 players to carry the bulk of your scoring most of the year? Not to that degree, but for the most of the year? Well,
you know, naturally I want them to score as many points as they can, and one thing that we were focusing on going into our first game, and will all season, is that we need balanced scoring. Last year, you know, Lisa Miller was generally the only one. At times, Pam Edwards would pop into the, you know, to the 20-point area, and it's pleasing to see other players, more than one, to have 3 of them with 20 points or more. It's very pleasing. If we can keep those 3 in double figures and perhaps get a few more points out of our other guards, you know, that's something we're probably going to need, because as time goes along, you know, and other teams start to focus on those 3, other people are going to have to rise to the occasion and become more of a scoring threat for us. And I think that will happen in time.
How does that help those 3 players? I mean, for all 3 of them, one, Lindy being a freshman, the other 2 as juniors, but making their first start. How important is that to get off on that kind of a good start?
Well, I think it's very important. I think it certainly gives them some confidence in knowing that they can be a scoring threat out there. I told Kim Recker last year, I said, expect a lot of playing time next year. I said, and if you do, can you promise me you'll double your scoring? So if I play you double minutes, we have double scoring. And she shook her head very confidently and said, yes, you know, I can do that. And she did her first game, so I hope it continues.
Think there's any pressure then to try to keep up that pace?
Oh, I don't know. We never talk about scoring expectations. You know, I never put pressure on the players and say, I expect this many points from you. However, if I felt that they weren't contributing as much as they were capable of, I certainly would do something about it, whether it meant getting the ball to them more often and when needed, you know, in the offense. But other than that, I really don't set expectations as far as scoring from individuals.
Now, Lindy Jones, the freshman, scoring 27 points, being your leading scorer, do you expect her to be one of, if not your leading scorer, most of the season?
I would hope that she's right among the top 2 or 3 leading scorers among our team. Right now, it's hard to say. You have 3 people who scored over 20 points in your very first game. It's hard to say in 3 or 4 games to come, you know, what the averages are going to be. But Lindy's going to have to contribute. Being a starter, being that we are young and don't have a lot of depth, she's going to have to, you know, get double figures at least for us.
And have you ever been associated with a team that had a freshman as one of their leading scorers?
Oh, not that I recall over the years. However, I do believe that Lisa Miller, as a freshman, contributed a great deal here. So it's not the first time it's happened at IPFW.
Now, one thing you did that was a little bit unusual in the game was substituting 5 players in, 5 players out at a time. Is that something you expect to do more often, or were you limited by some players being banged up? Well, I think it was a situation where we had a 31-9 point lead, and being our first game, our starters were quite exhausted, and they needed to come out of the game. With a lead like that, I felt comfortable in just putting 5 new people in to give our other people a rest. And then after that, I just substituted as we needed. So but it's not a general practice of mine, no. Okay. You ever seen that before? Have you ever seen it done as a regular practice anywhere? I have seen it at other schools where people will substitute an entirely new crew. Hillsdale, for one, our opponent tonight, plays 12 to 13, sometimes 14 people, and substitutes in mass at times. When I was at Vanderbilt, our men's team would substitute in mass, maybe not 5, but many times 3 and 4 subs at the same time. I think it's an ideal situation if you have the talent on your team where you can do that. When I was in South America this past season with Athletes in Action, that's exactly how I operated. You know, I had 10 athletes, all of which were very talented, and I just played 5 new people every 5 minutes. They got playing time and enjoyed themselves, and we did well. Do you think it helps the team and that those players go in as a unit and work together often? Yeah, I think it's very important that you get 5 people who begin to know each other's tendencies and what to expect from each other defensively, and the communication skills that go on out there. I think it's very important that you get 5 who can work together real well. Many times your second string communicates very well together as well, because every day at practice, you know, they're practicing together. That's one advantage we may have this year. In looking at our starting lineup this year was last year's second string, and they play together on the same team at practice every day. And I think it's carried over this year, and it certainly is an advantage for us. Okay, now let's take a look ahead at this weekend. Friday and Saturday, you're hosting the Lady Don tournament sponsored by Diet Pepsi and Rogers. You've got Missouri St. Louis, Wayne State, and Lake Superior State coming in. You start off with Wayne State. You had a chance to gather any kind of information on the 3 teams coming in? Well, I focused more on Wayne State since they are our first opponent. We did play them last year. We beat them by 12. They've only lost 1 key player. You know, we've lost several players. So it's going to be, you know, a very challenging ball game for us. I did have an opportunity to see them scout. They have some good size and some good quickness. Their outside shooting game, they have 1 or 2 individuals who are 3-point threats, and that's something we're going to have to be focusing on. As far as Lake Superior State and Missouri St. Louis, I haven't focused on them a great deal. You know, I know a little bit about them, and we'll have the opportunity to scout them on Friday night prior to our game. Do you prepare any differently for a tournament coming up, where you'll be playing 2 games in 2 days than you would for a regular single game? Yes, you do. You certainly take a look at the other teams, and you only have a few days to prepare at practice. So you want to implement things in practice that you feel you perhaps will use throughout the tournament. You don't want to focus entirely, you know, on your first opponent for the first game. And what I'm focusing on right now are just all the things that we do, the defenses that we use, the offenses that we use, and just trying to perfect them. And then it's just a matter of deciding which ones we'll use for which team. And then after this tournament, you'll have a week off, and then you'll go down to Edwardsville, Illinois for the SIU Edwardsville tournament. Will it help then having that week off after playing 2 games in 2 days?
Well, we have Tri-State on Tuesday,
right.
so we have a lot of games, you know, before Christmas, and it's unfortunate because of the shorter practice time. Many coaches don't want to play as early as we're allowed to. You know, we can start playing the Friday preceding Thanksgiving, and many coaches do not want to play that early with only 2.5 weeks of preparation. So you have to squeeze more games in a shorter period of time before our conference starts. So with our own tournament coming up, and then Tri-State on Tuesday, and then going on the road for another tournament, I think the kids will be thankful when exam week comes.
Okay. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in this week, and remind everybody the women's basketball team will be in action at the Gates Sports Center Friday and Saturday for the Diet Pepsi Rogers tournament, games at 5 and 7 both nights.
Hello and welcome to Coach K's Corner. I'm Dave Skelton, pinch hitting today for Dave Hilbert, the Sports Information Director of the IPFW Athletic Department, with Coach yes, I'll get it right in a minute, Eileen Kleinfelder, coach of the women's basketball team here at IPFW. And it's been a while, Kathleen, since the show has aired with holidays, breaks, final exams, and 3 ball games. Most recently, the victory, the big win over Northern Kentucky in the Great Lakes Valley Conference. Any particular pleasant moments that you want to start with here this morning from the Northern Kentucky victory?
Well, I just want to say it surely was a big lift for the team. You know, we have been struggling a little bit this year, largely due to you know, lack of depth and having some big shoes to fill with Lisa Miller being gone, and also with Pam Edwards out as a redshirt with her injury. And the kids really pulled together and got determined and decided that after our loss to Indianapolis on Wednesday that we were going to make some good things happen for ourselves. And, you know, we were in a position where we had nothing to lose and everything to gain by winning Saturday night. And Northern Kentucky in a position that they're undefeated and they have to do everything to win to keep that. And our girls just came out real confident and determined, and we felt very prepared in our game strategy and what we wanted to do, and for the most part everything fell right in place. And very good victory for us, and certainly gave us a lift to keep things going.
Well, from a fan standpoint, I think too it was a big win because we had seen the team play many close games, and a couple of them had gotten away right at the gun. This one, it was our turn, and tight ball game. Conference victory at home, So we needed this one, and it was a good one for the fans as well.
Most definitely. You know, with the young squad that we have had about 4 ball games that we have lost by fewer than 4 points. One of the most recent ones would have been right before Christmas against Edinburgh at home. You know, a tie ball game. We led throughout by as many points as 7 and 8, and right at the end, you know, they make a prayerful 10-foot layup that rolls out of the rim and rolls back in the rim and goes in at the buzzer, and that's a hard loss. But if we just keep plugging away and realize that we're right there, you know, we're right there with these teams. We just need to gain a little more experience and make better decisions toward the end of the ball game to get over that hump.
And the Edinburgh game, too, was one where just 6 seconds before that one happened to roll around and go in for Edinburgh, we had had a nice shot fall through and get a tie game, hoping to go into overtime, but it wasn't to be that particular night.
Right. I was real pleased. I didn't make that game due to a death in the family, but in watching the game film, I was very pleased to see the team with just about 45 seconds to go. We needed to score to tie the ball game up, and they ran their sideline inbounds play, and they were able to score, as you mentioned, and tie it up, and that was a step right there, you know, getting ourselves back in the ball game with just 45 seconds to go. And unfortunately, you know, they made the basket at the end, and those kind of things happen.
But the Northern Kentucky game obviously was one where the other side of the coin shows up, and it ended in our favor with some awfully good play and determined play and hard play.
Yeah, we were very fortunate to get to the free throw line quite often. I really feel that that's part of our game. We have to get to the free throw line. And it all depends on, you know, what kind of calls are going to be made that night. But we did make 26 of 32 free throws, and that helped us out a great deal. We took an early lead in the beginning of the game, and Northern Kentucky had a very difficult time in scoring. I think there was a lid on their basket. They did not score for the first 6 minutes of the game, and they had quite a few uncontested layups. It looked as if there really was a lid on their basket.
Well, that lid on their basket went along with the ice on the streets that were outside that night, too, because it was kind of an interesting night that night, although a good crowd.
Most definitely. I was very pleased with the crowd, considering the fact that school's not in session. But I think Northern always brings in a good crowd for us.
I think we have some clips coming up, Eileen, of the Northern Kentucky game. We missed one there, so we'll see how we can be alert to those coming up again. The nature of the Northern Kentucky game, and here we see IPFW had just scored, I believe. We'll get a little more, we'll get up on those. We'll catch those as we go along. But was it a different kind of game for IPFW in terms of were the opportunities different from, say, 3 nights before when we played Indianapolis?
I would say, number one, you know, we got to the free throw line. We did not get in bonus at all second half against Indianapolis, and as physical as that game was, I just couldn't see how, you know,
yeah, there was a lot of contact.
They could only score or foul but 6 times. A lot of contact in that game. So when we got the breaks with Northern, you know, the travels were called. I would say some other keys to winning, though, we talked about this a great deal before the game, was to have a lot of patience on offense, set a lot of good picks. You know, the longer we run offense, the greater the chances of them fouling. And our girls did do that. And all the things I've been asking them to do all season, it seemed as if they were very determined to make all of those things happen. Even down to take a charge off number 24. Dawn Dressler did that first half. Our help side defense was probably the best that we've had throughout the year.
Here's another clip from that ball game.
I think here we're going to see some longer range shooting from our post player, Kim Recker. That was another thing that helped us out a great deal. Both Kim and Michelle Conley, being at 6 feet, were able to shoot a couple 15-foot jumpers for us, and that was something I didn't think that their defense was ready for, and certainly, you know, added to the scoring effort that we had.
And it was a little bit of the kind of thing that they didn't do against Indianapolis. Didn't take that 16 or 17-foot jumper out there, sometimes maybe even when it had been available. But it had, you had mentioned the lid on the basket for Northern Kentucky. Part of that has to be, though, that there was pretty good defense played by the Lady Dons.
Yes, I would like to say that, you know, we played some good defense. And our strategy was one that, you know, we wanted to sag in a little bit, take away their inside game, because that was certainly their strength. Here you see Michelle Conley drawing the foul, and she certainly did a tremendous job in doing that and got herself to the free throw line 10 times and scored 9 of those. So 90% from the line from Michelle Conley was something that also helped, you know, and with just a 4-point win.
I'll have to tell Michelle she'll have to work on that. If she misses one, we're going to have to go for 10 for 10 next time.
Most definitely. So, but I felt we took away their inside game. A couple of their big girls shot about 3 of 18. We have 3 of 7, 0 of 3. And their scoring effort really came from the perimeter game with McClellan, who had a game high of 24 points, their little guard. And she also drove on us a few times and hurt us and stuck a few three-pointers against us. But our goal defensively was to take away the inside game, and I felt we did a good job with that.
Was the conference, and here's another clip of that night.
Yeah, I think here you might get a look at our defense and what I was just talking about. You can see we're just kind of packing it in. We're almost all in the paint, and we're giving them shorter shots in there. They're just not looking to take them. When we got a good hedge there and plugged it up, and then here's a shot that they feel they have to take. That was their point guard, who really doesn't look to be a scorer, and that night she was 1 of 12. So even though we gave them shots as close as the free throw line, and as you could see, we were packed in pretty tight. They weren't able to feed the ball inside.
Pretty good rebound position, so that
exactly
when they weren't able to get the jump shot to fall. After the first week of the conference play, any big surprises in any of the other games that were played?
Well, last year, you know, St. Joe went undefeated for quite a while, and they did lose the other night, I understand, to Bellarmine, at Bellarmine, convincingly by 16 points. I find that a little bit of a surprise. And some of the other schools that are up and coming in the conference, Southern Indiana, one of our opponents this weekend, is doing much better this year. You know, they're really improving. They had everybody back from last year, and they've had some good victories. Kentucky Wesleyan's had some solid wins. Indianapolis is not really a surprise to me. They had all 5 starters back, and as a veteran team, I really predicted that they would be one of the top 1 or 2 teams in the conference. And in Northern Kentucky is just traditionally strong. You know, Nancy Wenzel does a very good job down there.
Yes, they're year in and year out. They're going to be a difficult team to play, and as we see here, Northern again has the ball.
Yeah, I think we're looking at our help side defense there by Kim Recker and Jenny Newhard. I really felt that night was really one of their better efforts as far as help side defense goes.
And it takes a while for a new player, particularly the freshman players, to adjust to playing defense, help side defense. In high school, they may not have had to have worried too much about that.
No, I don't think so. And I want to give our freshmen a lot of credit. Jenny Newhard came in the latter part of the second half, and toward the end of the ball game was 2 of 2 from the field. Within the last 2 minutes, scored 2 baskets for us, and then pulled down a very important rebound after, I believe, their missed layup toward the end of the ball game with about 50 seconds to go, and drew the foul, went down, and clutched both free throws, and put us up and put us in a better position to win the basketball game. But after the game, someone made comment to her that she's no longer a freshman in what she was able to do that night, and that she had ice in her veins.
She's a veteran.
Yes.
Well, here we have IPFW with the ball.
And here's some good ball movement. Michelle Conley dishing off to Dawn Dressler, who flared off. And, you know, we talked a lot about being patient on offense and looking for the good shots. You know, and seeing something like this with, you know, the ball going inside and then coming right back out to a guard who's flared off her defense, you know, we concentrate on that a lot. And to see it all happen certainly encouraged me as a coach. And I think it's going to help us out in the
that
future.
last highlight particularly, the ball moved fast enough that the defense couldn't catch up. The wide open jumper was there, and we hit it.
Right. And Michelle Conley was looking for Dawn right away. That's something we're doing a better job of.
You mentioned that Jenny Newhard is now, some of the teammates saying, well, she's a veteran now, can't be a freshman for the entire year. We're not quite at the midway point of the season, but from an individual standpoint, from the scoring, we've had pretty good balance, haven't we, in terms of the overall scoring? There'll be a different person, perhaps, who may be the leading scorer this game, and the next game it's somebody else.
Right. We have 4 people in double figures, you know, averaging? 10 to 13 points. We don't have Elisa Miller averaging 25 points or Pam Edwards, you know, averaging 18 points. Sometimes that can be to our advantage because our opponents can't focus on just 1 or 2 players and try to shut them down. Right. You know, they have to honor everyone as a scorer. And Amy Perkins has really risen to the occasion to be more of a scorer for us. She was averaging only about 4 points a game, and the other night she had 12. And she has a lot more confidence, and I really feel that if we can get the ball reversed, Amy Perkins can take anybody to the hole, you know, if we get that defense shifting. And she did that. You know, she scored 12 points for us and helped us out a lot.
So the early part of the season has been an opportunity for several of the players to find out maybe what they really can do and where they can contribute.
Exactly, and I don't think we're anywhere close to being at our prime, and I hope that that comes, you know, the latter part of the conference play and entering into NCAA tournament possibilities. But we're just improving every day, you know, and I have to give the girls a lot of credit for their efforts. With the losses that we've had, we haven't had any frustration expressed by the team. We don't have any team dissension. We don't have people blaming each other. Each day they realize they're just going to get better and better, and some good things can happen for us.
And it is tough when you lose several close ones, because it would be easy to get your dauber down and say, well, we just can't get over the hump. But they're there, and they're coming along.
Right.
The first half of the season also has had some injuries. Well, even before the season started with Pam Edwards. Is there an update on Pam's condition?
Well, she's coming along real well with her therapy, and the only problem is just as of yesterday, she went back to see her surgeon, and they found a cyst located near Achilles tendon, and they want to remove that. So she's been redshirted for the year, and I've accepted that. So they think now that we might as well go ahead and take the cyst out that's down there by her Achilles. And then she has a lot of anatomical problems with her feet. Her other heel bone is really too large, and it stretches her Achilles too much, and they want to shave some of the bone off of her heel. So she's going to have 2 surgeries within the next 2 months, and they claim that they'll have her ready to go for next year.
That sounds like a complete overhaul on the heel job that she's going to have.
Get her some new feet.
And be ready to go. But I had noticed that she was no longer in a cast, walking with just a little bit of a limp.
Right.
But now she's going to probably have some more of that plaster Paris maybe to lug around after some additional surgery and some things. So we wish her the best. She's missed, that's for sure, this year. But if she can come back for her 4th year next year, why, that'll be a kind of a nice surprise next year.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we're looking forward to having her back. And she adds a lot to the team, just her presence. You know, she comes to every practice, helps us out with the score clock and the shot charts that we keep. And on the bench, she's always encouraging the team and in our team meetings. So her presence is felt, most definitely. We'd like to have her on the court.
Sure. Well, at this time, we'll take a break, and we'll be right back with the second half of the show.
You were the first in this family to get into college.
I'm so proud of you.
I can't go, can I? I just can't afford to send you.
I didn't mean to let you down.
I understand. Maybe next year. Maybe.
Hard-working students deserve a chance. Please, support the United Negro College Fund. A mind is a terrible thing to waste.
This is the increasingly competitive world we live in, and this is the country we want ahead of the competition. These are the people we'll be depending on to keep this country ahead of the competition. These are the colleges and universities we're relying on for the people we're depending on to keep this country ahead of the competition. So if you want America to stay #1 in the world, do something about it. Give to the college of your choice.
Welcome back to Coach K's Corner. We've been talking about the season up to this point. Mentioned one of our 2 freshman players who have been playing a lot during the course of the season. Lindy Jones is another one, local girl from Belmont. Could you give us a little bit of a progress report on Lindy this season?
Well, Lindy's done really an exceptional job for us this year thus far. You know, she had to step in as a freshman and fill a starting position for us. She's had some pressure here and there where people want to compare her with Lisa Miller and some of the things that she does. But, you know, I think she has her own specialties. You know, Lindy can shoot from the outside, maybe a little bit more range of what Lisa had, but she also can drive to the basket, draw the foul, and she has good quickness, you know, adds to our perimeter game and our driving abilities, and we need that. You know, oftentimes we stay out in the perimeter and aren't able to drive against the teams like we should, and she adds that to our game. Her attitude's been very good, and she's working hard, and probably the only difficulty she has, you know, as a freshman is just learning our system. There's there's so much to learn, so many plays and offenses and defensive rules and that sort of thing. But she's given her best effort and she's really coming along. And I would have to say there have been many games, especially when teams have gone zone against us, that Lindy has pulled us through. With an outside shot or a nice drive to the basket or a steal here or there.
Well, someone once said the best thing about a freshman is that they become a sophomore. But as you had alluded to earlier, Jenny Newhart, the freshman part is pretty much behind her, and probably the same thing for Lindy. They're neither one really freshmen anymore, although they still have plenty to learn.
Right, and I'm just encouraged to know that they're getting all this experience this year, and then they'll be back for 3 more years.
Well, one of the most interesting things for freshmen usually is your first major conference road trip. And you are about a day or two away from that major road trip, playing Kentucky Wesleyan on Thursday night and then Southern Indiana Saturday afternoon. What can we look forward to from these two teams on the road this year?
Well, we've been playing better on the road, it seems.
I wasn't going to mention that, but yeah, I think you're right.
Kentucky Wesleyan, is always a difficult place to play. We were able to win there last year by 12. They have, for the most part, most of the same team back. I think they've had a situation much like ours, a few people leaving the team and some major injuries. And they're also quite young. Last year they started a freshman and a sophomore at the post position. Those 2 players are still with them, and they do have a very strong inside game. I would say that probably their weakness is basically like ours. They don't have a strong long-range perimeter game. So we should be pretty evenly matched, Thursday night, and it'll be a good game for us.
Last year, Kentucky Wesleyan seemed to me to be probably one of the most improved conference teams. They had had some tough years preceding that, but they were very competitive last year.
Yeah, most definitely. They defeated us here at home the second time that we played them, just by 1 point.
That's right. That was a tight ball game. But they, as I say, they were much improved last year. Southern Indiana, on the other hand, last year, as I remember, was a very young team, a lot of freshmen. Are they a little bit tougher this year?
Yes, most definitely. Last year was Chancellor Dugan's first year as the head coach, and she did bring in some younger players and also a few Division I transfers from the program she was with prior to that. It was just a matter of the kids learning their system. They're a very physical ball club. Most times they'll play all 14 people, and they'll come in and just play tenacious defense and a very, very physical defense. Many times get themselves in foul trouble, but they just wear you out.
Don't worry about the foul trouble because they have somebody else coming right in to hack you again, huh? Yeah.
And they're a very balanced team. They're difficult to defend. They have a good inside game. Their post player lock just scored 22 points the other night. And then I learned too that they were 8 of 21 from the perimeter, a 3-point shooting. And so you've got to get in their face in the perimeter, and as soon as you do that, they're banging it inside, and they're driving on you and drawing fouls and getting the dish off. So your head's spinning, long rebounds and that sort of thing. They're a little bit difficult to defend.
So their coaches don't holler too much at them about slow ball movement. They keep it going around, and you have to catch up. Anything particularly different that either of these two teams might do to, from a fast break standpoint or pressing than that we haven't maybe seen from anybody yet this year?
Well, we've had quite a few moments where we've been pressed, and it's been effective, most times, but we're able to get through it different times too. That's where patience enters in. I kind of expect the same thing from Kentucky Wesleyan. However, they do have a new coach this year, and you may see some different things as far as their defensive play and that kind of thing. Certainly, offensive pattern is going to be a little bit different. So I don't know if if their inside game is going to be the same as it was last year and what they're able to get offensively. USI, much of the very same from last year. Just very, very aggressive, hard denial, man-to-man defense, and I'm sure that they'll put some full court pressure on us. And then some quick hitting offense, inside, outside.
Now, those two teams played each other last weekend, is that right? Kentucky Wesleyan and Southern?
I do believe. And
do you have any idea how that one came out?
I believe Southern did come out on top with that.
Okay. Well, it was their home game, so that seems to be how that rivalry goes down there. The season so far has been one of a lot of close games. This last one from Northern Kentucky, we came out the winner. Are there any surprising statistics on our team that things that you had expected to be higher and they turned out lower, or anything that turned out lower that you thought might be higher?
Well, I think in the Northern game, our turnovers were much lower than what we had been averaging. And that was good. That was our plan, take care of the ball, be patient, and eliminate a lot of the turnovers. I've been real surprised with our defense field goal percentage, and what we're able to hold our opponents to. The other night, Northern scored, they were just 20% from the field the first half, and overall they were 34 for the game. I would like our field goal percentage to be a little higher. We too were a little lower than our average. We're averaging about 43% from the field, and that night we were only 38%. Our free throw shooting didn't start out as good as we'd like it to at the beginning of the season, but we have improved in that area, and the other night we were in about 81% from the line.
Is the three-point shot a major factor in this year's game?
Most definitely. Just about every team that we prepare for, there's always one or two players that we have to key in on as very good three-point shooters. And it can make or break you in a game. It gets you over that hump when they get the 3 points on certain shots. And with Indianapolis coming out and scoring 4 of 5 from three-point land the first half, certainly gave them a jump, in the game.
Yeah, it's a nice little cushion to have when 3 rings up on the board instead of 2. In fact, Indianapolis was probably last year one of the better outside shooting teams, weren't they, in the conference?
Yes, they have a young lady, Melissa Graham, who has done an exceptional job. She's about 49% from the field. I was hoping that some of our players could be 49% from the paint.
And include the layups.
And this young lady shooting 49% from three-point range, I should say.
That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. Well, we'll see them again at their place and have a chance to atone for that one loss from last week. The Northern Kentucky team came in here undefeated, went home with a defeat. How do they compare to years past?
Well, I think they're a little bit of a different team this year. They have a lot of transfers in. They've got a sophomore by the name of Donnelly, who was a very solid post player for them, did not have a good night against us. Another young lady by the name of Duncan, a transfer from Radford University, did not have a good night from inside. She was doing very well for them up until Saturday night and was just 3 of 18 from inside the paint. They just didn't have a good shooting night. They have been better from the perimeter, and I want to say, too, that my understanding is that they lost one of their better perimeter shooters with a knee injury, a girl by the name of Wahonis. Is a very good outside shooter. And if she would have been in the game, I think it certainly would have been a different matchup for us, because then we would have had 2 people to get after in three-point land.
This looks to might be a very balanced women's division of the Great Lakes Valley Conference this year. St. Joe has lost one already. Yeah, they're probably going to be one of the favorites, but yet it's going to be pretty tough. It would appear that any week, particularly on the road, it can be some tough teams to encounter no matter who you're playing.
I agree. I think there's a great deal of parity this year in our conference, and I still think, though, that you're going to see the Bellarmine teams, the St. Joe teams, Northern Kentucky teams, year in, year out, always toward the top. Indianapolis, I don't want to forget about them. And, IPFW has been up generally in the top 5 over the years. Last year was our highest place finish, placing second by ourselves after St. Joe. And, we're hoping that we can rank as highly as we possibly can this year. Nothing's out of the question. It's anybody's game at this point. Anyone can win the conference at this point. And we're just hoping for better things both this year and then next year as well.
And I think I heard somebody say, or maybe I saw a score, that the Kentucky State team had won a conference game already, and they had a real tough year last year. So it's going to be an interesting year. We're barely into it, but yet here we go for that first road trip. And before classes get started, I guess that's kind of a nice time to have a long road trip for Evansville and Owensboro.
Right, because we're able to have practices a little bit earlier. In fact, we're going to practice early tomorrow before we take off for Owensboro, so that we can get settled in the hotel tomorrow night and get a good meal and watch some game film and get ourselves ready for the game.
And with these 3 or 4 days not having to miss any classes because they don't start until next week, that's kind of an advantage also.
Right, and I think the players kind of feel that too, that they don't have the pressure of getting their schoolwork done. Oftentimes they take their books with them on the bus and in the hotels and feel a little bit of pressure to try to make up for that work that they're missing out on.
Along with a couple of those crazy games they take on to play on the bus.
Yes, most definitely.
Have a little fun. Well, it's going to be an interesting season. The Great Lakes Valley is now underway. We're into things serious and for real. 1-1 is a good start. 2-0 would have probably been your preference, but 1-1 not bad, particularly considering the strength of the two teams that we played. And now we go into this probably as tough a road trip as there can be in the conference, although they're all tough. None of them are very easy. But we certainly want to wish you the best of luck on these next two. We look forward to getting back home the following week, and we'll see what kind of a report we can have at that time. So good luck to the Lady Dons. Go after 2 of them this week.
Thank you very much. We'll give it our best shot.
For Coach Kleinfelder, this is Dave Skelton, pinch hitting for Dave Gilbert, Sports Information Director at IPFW, thanking you for being with us.